Welcome back to part 3 of our digital media literacy Q&A lecture, our asynchronous dialogue in progress in media res. And I was in the middle of responding to some questions from Elizabeth Lee. And I got on such a soapbox there, such a pedestal. I was on a real roll that classic Pappy G lost track of time. So it's likely part 2 just stops right mid-thought, and all of that's lost to time, right? It's lost. We will never get it back. But I'm going to carry on here and look at some additional questions from Elizabeth. So let's shift over to the Denisi text, Pop Culture Introductory Perspectives, 3rd edition. On page 72, Denisi discusses the journalist Walter Lippmann, popular this week. I love it. I love the synergistic through lines you all are making collectively. But Lippmann and how he believes the media controls us. While I acknowledge the media does have a significant amount of persuasion on society, this makes it sound like we're dumb, gullible humans, incapable of original thought. This portrayal of an, quote, evil media, end quote, in control is a key term often used by the very people and organizations distributing fake news. Bingo! Bingo! All right? Those the loudest people out there on certain types of programming. The ones cackling conspiracy theories, they're practicing the very thing that they are claiming, like big government or big media is guilty of, right? I mean, this is the pot calling the kettle black here. So my question is, how did we get to this point where we are so paranoid about everything? There's going to be a meta response that's intentionally simple. It's easier to believe in simple logic than to practice critical thinking. And that's why conspiracy theories proliferate to the level they do. It's easier to believe something simple, like, oh, it's connected and there's always kind of a Machiavellian intent behind it, than to recognize, okay, we're increasingly interconnected, things are increasingly complex, democracy's messy. There's compromises that need to be made in order for it to function properly, and we don't like that. We just want simple. Give me my drive-through. How impatient do you get if you go through the fast food drive-through somewhere and it's not immediately ready? Right? There's some kind of issue with even the ordering, the paying, the picking up, the condiments. We're furious, right? And it has to do with some kind of ingrained need or drive towards simplicity. On page 85, Denisi talks about how anyone can become a celebrity, even serial killers. This may be going a bit off topic. I don't know. Let's see. Let's diverge. Let's digress. But one thing trending in today's pop culture is our obsession with murders. Pause. Agreed. We have TV shows, movies, even podcasts devoted to their lives. I know the interest in serial killers is nothing new, but being part of pop culture and how we glamorize their lives is, or seems to be. This is a sign that the instant access of the digital age, is this a sign that the instant access of the digital age has caused us to become numb to the world around us? Oh, media effects? Is that what I'm hearing? Numbness? Numb to the world around us, making us crave something more sinister? Ooh, I don't think we can get a positive response on this. I don't have this is the complete answer. And that's the key to media effects studies in general, is that no matter how how likely the claims and the hypotheses and the theorizations sound about media effects, we can never fully like reach conclusive results because people have such diverse reactions and responses to it. We do see an uptick in it. I would suggest this is, as it has always been, an instance where people are attracted to the macabre, right? The macabre, and always have been. And the difference is we have this increase in visibility in visual culture, very visual culture now. Media culture is a visual culture, and plus we have increasing movement, especially within some media circles, the erasure of moral boundaries. Okay, so morality in the U.S. is like uncool these days. Or sort of like it's been replaced by maybe like political correctness is the new morality. And I think there's an argument that can be made there about that. You know, it's kind of like, well, your old morality was too individualistic and kind of focused in one type of direction that seems to appease mostly one type of American, whereas political correctness is meant to involve all of us, but yet we still find pockets of isolation, alienation, and so on, dissension. But these moral boundaries, that had been established over a few hundred years we're kind of graying that in again, right? Denise talks about retromania on page 90, and I'm wondering if this is something generational, if it's generationally specific. Do you think retromania affects millennials or Generation Z the way it does for the Gen Xers? Interesting question. I think it's fun to talk about these things. In fact, I got a recommended reading for you. I just picked up this volume recently called Mediated Nostalgia. I thought you'd get a kick out of that, Elizabeth. Individual Memory and Contemporary Mass Media from Ryan Lizardi. And actually, this isn't even Lizardi. 2 years later, this was 2015. 2017, he's got another book out on nostalgia, on mediated nostalgia. So Lizardi's on a roll here, and it's got some great insights and rich citational work in that book. But I think time will tell, and we can certainly suspect that the difference now is everything is new. It's new now, and for Gen X or Gen Y or millennials or what have you, and so they're experiencing things in the present, and then down the line we get the next generation coming up. It's so very likely they will start to reflect with that kind of ultra nostalgic lens for certain areas of their likely childhood or adolescence or what have you. And this is I think you see it across every generation, really. Here's some questions from John Lee. Okay. If novels gained so much popularity in the 18th and 19th centuries, why haven't the readers questioned whether or not these novels are what we're now calling fake news? Is it because they are engrossed in the stories? Or is it because they know what truth is or what fiction is, right? So, in other words, I think this question gets at boundaries and history and generations, and it kind of opens up a discussion and a commentary on that. There were likely clearer distinctions between fiction and nonfiction then. I think the majority of people still know what fiction is today, but in terms of like fiction storytellers, there wasn't this overwhelming interest in deceit. Perhaps like deceit hadn't been fully monetized. Do we know what I suggest by monetized? Like to turn something into a very profitable venture. Although, things, it's like if they wanted to be profitable through descent, they would, I don't know, bootleg rum or, do something like this. And so, to tie it to literacy, though, let me make this suggestion. Go back and research, pull some archives, look at some old medical pamphlets of the day, right? Of, the 1700s. There is plenty of medical pamphlets that purported what we could call fake news now. The difference is they just thought they were right. We didn't have the scientific advancements to justify or to prove, right, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that someone was suffering from, I don't know, liver disease, as opposed to there was like a snake demon in them or something like that, right? And so we hadn't had those kinds of progressive breakthroughs to help us in that way. Science was not a fully established field, and neither was medicine. Even as recently as the 1700s, even early 1800s, this is very sparse, and what we knew needed lots of progress and testing and retesting and updates. Even though we can trace the scientific method and all its sort of advancements back thousands of years in different waves of influence that got us to where we are today. But it only in really that relatively recent time frame do we see those advancements. So I just don't think that was there was blurred discrepancy in fiction, nonfiction. Even the story, and I think Denise tells this story in chapter 1 maybe or 2 of Popular Culture about the War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells, and how they did, this is a literary novel, 1800s, late 1800s, and they did a radio broadcast of it in, say, the 1920s or 30s, and Orson Welles, does this provocative voice work, and allegedly, story or history, cultural history goes, that people were flipping out and they were freaking out, and there's an invasion and all this kind of stuff was happening, and panic and anarchy was ensuing, and this is the first recorded instance of media effects on a mass scale. But it's now suggested how much of that is interpolation, how much of that is our kind of mythologization of that event as something much bigger than it actually was. So that's something to think about. And in terms of, back to your question about, did they know the difference because they understood the difference between what is true and what is fiction? Who's to say they did? Who's to say, the common folk, they just didn't have the internet to propel hogwash. But, there have always been sort of your local variations and your kind of tribal village takes on reality throughout history, right? And, false interpretations of what some type of event or phenomenon or thing actually is.